What is up, y'all? Welcome to Hood History. So we're finally here. We're finally cooking. We're finally gonna get going. So today, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna introduce one book, and I'm gonna drop 3 quotes about it, and really kind of overlay what we're gonna be going over for a little bit before we move on to the next thing. I am gonna be using multiple books, so I am gonna be dropping a few more videos after this on these other books with a few quotes from them too. This is gonna be pretty entertaining. It's gonna be pretty fun. So the first book, without further ado, here we go. Is going to be Dark Alliance by Gary Webb. So this was the first book that actually really got me into history, because it really opened up my mind to a lot of things that we just turn a blind eye to, were not talked about in class, in history class and stuff like that. And it really made me realize that the way we were taught history in school, for the most part, is either an outright lie or just a manipulation of the truth to fit a narrative. And that is my biggest pet peeve. That's what I hate about society the most, is the way that history is twisted to fit a narrative. Because I really do feel that if we had more historical context as people, we would make much better decisions, not just in our political lives when we voted, but in our personal lives as well. So without a further ado, here we go. We're gonna crack it open. We're gonna get started, guys. This is gonna be lit. I can't wait. All right, brothers and sisters, if you would turn in your Bible to numerical number IX. I can't read that. All right, so what this is the foreword by Maxine Waters, who is the congresswoman for the 43rd Congressional District of California, which is one of the places that was the most heavily affected by these drugs. So she was one of the first people who got the Dark Alliance, not this big old book form, but just like the small posted newspaper. And this is what she had to say. The night that I read the Dark Alliance series, I was so alarmed that I literally sat straight up in bed, poring over every word. I reflected on the many meetings I attended throughout South Central Los Angeles during the 1980s when I consistently asked, where are all the drugs coming from? I asked myself that night whether it was possible for such a vast amount of drugs to be smuggled into any district under the noses of the community leaders, police, sheriff's departments, FBI, DEA, and other law enforcement agencies. So basically what happened is Miss Maxine found out where all the drugs were coming from in this book. And what was most alarming to her was that whenever she had gone to these council meetings, to congressional meetings, all these things, that she was asking and saying, hey, we have this big drug problem. It's destroying our streets. It's destroying our small income communities. Where are the drugs coming from? Where are the drugs coming from? We have to do something about this. The federal government, specifically the CIA, the FBI, the DEA, all these people were going, we don't know. We can't find out. We have no clue, which, as we will come to find, is not true. The government wanted the drugs to be there, the government was facilitating the drugs to be there, and the government was getting something because the drugs were there. And we're about to move on to that. All right, so our first quote was about a very concerned congresswoman who was trying to figure out how the drugs were getting into America. This second snippet is going to be about a politician who was facilitating drugs getting into America. A lot of y'all know him, a lot of y'all love him, a lot of y'all hate him. Without further ado, here we go. So if you would turn in your Bible to page 118 of Gary Webb's Dark Alliance. Clinton's critics have charged that it was impossible for the governor of Arkansas to have been unaware of SEAL's activities in Mena. Indeed, Reed, a former Arkansas state trooper, L.D. Brown, and Larry Patterson, both of whom have been critics of Clinton, insisted he knew quite a bit about it, including the fact that the cocaine was involved. Patterson, a member of Government Clinton's security detail, testified that he and other troopers were aware that a large quantity of drugs were being flown into Manila Airport, a large quantity of money, large quantities of guns, and that there was an ongoing operation training foreign people in that area, and that it was a CIA operation. But wait, there's more. A mechanic at Mena Airport, John Bender, swore in the deposition that he saw Clinton there 3 times in 1985. Ex-Trooper Brown said that when he confronted Clinton about the cocaine flights SEAL was involved in, Governor Clinton replied, "That's Laster's deal," referring to his close friend and campaign contributor, Little Rock bondbroker Danny Ray Laster. In 1986, Laster was indicted by the federal grand jury in Little Rock on drug charges, and Clinton's brother Roger, a cocaine addict, was named an unindicted conspirator. Laster pleaded guilty to drug trafficking. He received a 30-month prison sentence, but only served 6 months in prison because Clinton pardoned him in 1990. Clinton supporters have maintained that Laster was no drug dealer, simply a high-flying businessman who got a little too caught up in the fast life. But that's not how the FBI describes it in a 1988 report citing the Bureau's successful battle against major drug trafficking organizations. According to the FBI description of its investigation, Lassner was part of a huge drug ring. The investigation revealed that this businessman was the main supplier of cocaine to the investment banking and bond community in the Little Rock area, which was the largest bond community in the United States outside of New York City. So I chose to pick this quote for obvious reasons, because it exposes a very popular politician for quite literally, at the very least, turning a blind eye to a bunch of drugs, cocaine, crack, money, drugs, illegal immigrants from other countries to come in and be used by the CIA and by the government to further their means and hurt the American people. And what's even more insane about this is that this man, after doing this to our country, was voted for and went on to be the 42nd president of the United States. So you see what I'm saying? That if we were more educated about history and if we knew more, we would have never voted for this man. This man was selling drugs to our communities, getting our mothers, brothers, sisters, daughters locked up in prison, killed, murdered, while I'm ranting too much now, but like, this is my passion. This is my passion. This is why I hate the way that history is twisted and lied about, because a literal drug dealer was our 42nd president of the United States. But on to the next quote. We're going to get even deeper. All right, so this next quote needs a little bit of context. I'm going to talk about these three doctors. I'm going to talk about Dr. Sigel, who was under government contract to try to investigate what crack and cocaine did to the body and the brain, and who was trying to do a lot of research on it in an attempt to release it to the public and make the public not want to do this drug, which is a great thing. Homeboy did a lot of good stuff. Then we have Raul Jerry, who was a doctor from Peru, and he was Peru is kind of where the epidemic started, because people started to smoke this thing called coca paste, which was a byproduct of the creation of cocaine, and it was like kind of the predecessor to crack in a lot of ways. But anyways, he was one of the first people who was hands-on trying to rehabilitate people, doing research, trying to find out why it was so habit-forming, what it did to the brain, and all sorts of stuff like that. He did a bunch of research, and then he came and tried to warn Americans. And the last guy I'm going to talk about, Dr. Robert Byack, who is a drug expert on smokable cocaine from Yale, which is one of the coolest titles ever. Like, when I think PhD students have boring lives, like, that disproves it. Like, that's pretty badass. If my dissertation was being an expert on smokable cocaine, brother. But anyways, here we go. So here's our first doctor. When Segal, under the U.S. government contract, finished a massive report on the history and literature of cocaine smoking, he couldn't get the government to publish it, allegedly due to the concerns that readers would rush out and start smoking once they found out how to turn the powder into freebase. They wanted me to do a scientific paper about cocaine smoking, but not tell anyone how it was done, Segal said disgustingly. I tried to explain that people already knew how it was done. That's why there was a problem. Concerned that the information might never get out, he published it himself in a small medical journal 2 years later. Now on to the next doctor, Raul Jerry. In 1982, Raul Jerry came to the United States to deliver his warning in person. He trotted out horror stories about the Walking Dead, the coke zombies that populated Peru. He showed slides and said, I would like to warn the U.S. against the plague that is about to reach its borders. Jerry said dramatically, the trivialization of cocaine use is a curse on humanity. The speech was followed by uneasy silence. A doctor in the audience remembered, damn, bro. In 1982, Raul Jerry came to the United States to deliver his warning in person. He trotted out his horror stories about the Walking Dead, the coke zombies that populated Peru. I would like to warn the U.S. against a plague that is about to reach its borders, Jerry said dramatically as the lights came back on. The trivialization of cocaine use is a curse on humanity. How did Jerry treat such patients? Someone asked. Nothing worked really, Jerry said. They tried everything, long-term periods of confinements, heavy doses of tranquilizers, lobotomies. It didn't matter. The relapse rate was between 50 and 80%. This is one warning. Now we're going to move on to the next one. We have no time left. All right. Byack said the Food and Drug Administration shut down attempts to do any serious research on addiction or treatment, refusing to approve grants, requests, or research proposals, and withholding the government permits necessary to run experiments with controlled substances. The FDA almost totally roadblocked our getting anything done. The regulations which govern the legal importation of cocaine research for... All right, now our last quote of the day, so this one's by Dr. Robert Byack. Byack said the Food and Drug Administration shut down attempts to do any serious research on addiction or treatment, refusing to approve grants, research, or request proposals, and withholding the government permits necessary to run experiments with controlled substances. The FDA almost totally roadblocked our getting anything done. The regulations which govern the legal importation of cocaine and coca research are much more effective than the regulations which seem to govern smoking or smuggling.